Okay, so for this deep dive, you've given us a ton of material on global digital management, which is really exciting. It's a huge topic, obviously.
It is.
But our goal here is to, as always, kind of pull out those key insights about building and running a digital business, but specifically on that global scale, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be working exclusively from these BMGC notes. Is that right? Chapter 16?
That's right. Yeah. Chapter 16, Global Digital Management.
Global-Digital-Management.docx.PDF.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to really dissect everything here from, like what are even the fundamental definitions?
Yeah.
What are the big challenges? We're going to explore some of the technologies. We'll talk about SMAC and BRADA. I think those will come up.
Absolutely.
And then really get into the models, the digital business models and what makes some succeed and some, kind of struggle. So ready to kind of get a clear, focused understanding of this whole landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think your notes actually do a really smart thing by starting with the definitions.
Okay.
Like digitization, digital transformation, because those terms get kind of jumbled up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things too where it's like it's so easy to just kind of nod your head and be like, yeah, I got it. But then if someone actually stopped you on the street and was like, what's the difference?
Exactly.
You'd be like,
I work in tech, but I don't know.
Right, exactly. So let's break this down. So digitization.
Okay.
How are we defining that in these notes?
So in these notes, it really comes down to taking things that aren't digital and making them digital.
Yeah.
Right. So that initial conversion, like the classic example they use is, you have a health record on paper and you turn that into a digital file that a computer can understand.
Yeah.
That's really digitization.
Right. So it's really like that core action of like analog to digital. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. Like encoding information into a digital form.
Okay.
And then you build on that with digitalization, right? Which isn't just having digital stuff.
Right.
It's actually using digital technologies and data to improve business operations, functions, or activities.
Okay.
Right. So it's moving beyond just having it and actually doing something with it.
So would it be fair to say, like with that same health record example,
yeah,
digitization is turning it into a digital file, but digitalization is then using that digital file to maybe like schedule appointments more efficiently or...
Right, or to understand trends in the data to improve patient health, patient care.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really about like, okay, we've got the raw material now.
Right.
How do we actually put it to work?
Yeah, how do you apply those digital capabilities to enhance the business operations?
Yeah, and then the big kahuna, right, is digital transformation.
Yes.
Which really feels like that organization-wide shift.
Right. It's not just a specific process, it's the whole organization.
Right.
Really changing how it works.
Yeah.
To take advantage of digital technologies.
So, I mean, are we basically saying that you can't really have that digital transformation without first?
Oh, that's what they argue in these notes.
Okay.
Which I think is fair,
okay.
Right? You need both digitization to have the data, but then you need digitalization to have those capabilities to really achieve digital transformation.
Right. So it's like a building block kind of situation. You gotta have the foundation before you can, build the skyscraper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then the notes kind of move into exploring the actual technologies that make all this possible, right? And they use these acronyms SMAC and BRADA, which I think are pretty useful in kind of categorizing things.
They are, yeah, and it's interesting to see how these technologies, both on their own, but especially when they work together, become the real drivers of digitalization,
right?
And then ultimately digital transformation.
Okay, so let's break those down. So SMAC.
Okay, so SME stands for social media, mobile technology, analytics, and cloud computing.
Okay, so social media. I mean, we're talking like the Facebooks, the Twitters, the LinkedIns of the world, right?
Yeah, it's those interactive technologies, the Web 2.0, where users can, create content, they can share, they can discuss.
Right. So it's really about participation, like online.
Exactly. Yeah, co-creation, all that.
Okay, cool. And then mobile technology.
Right. So mobile technology is obviously centered around, cellular networks.
Right.
You've got the evolution from 3G to 4G to 5G now, and all those devices that we use every day smartphones, GPS.
Yeah.
Um, and the notes really point out that, the future of computing is kind of tied to this idea of mobile computing
Right.
and wireless networking. It's all about, having that access
Yeah.
wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how, I mean, I feel like that's just become such a baseline expectation now.
It has.
Like
It's just assumed, right?
it's just assumed. And if I can't do something,
Yeah.
On my phone or get information quickly, I'm like, what's wrong with this company?
Yeah. This is so 2010.
Exactly. So, okay, so we've got social media, we've got mobile, and then we have analytics.
Right. So analytics is where you start to get meaning from all this data that you're now generating and collecting, right? So it's about discovering, interpreting,
Okay.
And communicating meaningful patterns in data.
So it's not just, okay, we have a bunch of data. It's
No.
what does it tell us?
Exactly. And businesses use this for all sorts of things,
Mhm.
like predicting customer behavior, optimizing supply chains.
Right.
Even just tailoring retail experiences.
Yeah, it's really about turning that raw data into something that is actionable.
Exactly. Yeah. Valuable and actionable.
Okay, and then cloud computing, which kind of feels like the backbone of a lot of this.
Yeah. Cloud computing is essentially, having access to computing resources
Mhm.
like storage, processing power,
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing it over the internet,
Right.
right? So you don't have to manage all that hardware yourself.
It's like having this huge flexible IT infrastructure that you can kind of tap into as you need.
Exactly. Yeah. It's usually hosted in big data centers.
Okay.
And the notes talk about the difference between enterprise cloud,
Mm.
which is for one organization,
Mm.
and then public cloud,
Right.
which
Right.
multiple users are on.
And the advantages there they seem pretty clear, right? Like you don't have to invest as much upfront in your own infrastructure.
Right.
You can deploy things more quickly. It's
Mhm.
easier to manage. You can scale up or down depending on your needs. But
Mhm.
the notes also point out, that there are some potential downsides.
Absolutely.
Like especially when we talk about data security, right?
Yeah.
Especially in those public cloud environments.
Especially in the public cloud. Yeah.
And then also, just the headache of regulatory compliance, right? Because globally,
Oh, yeah.
those vary wildly. So
Yeah. And the potential for getting locked into a particular vendor
right.
can also be a problem.
And I imagine integrating with existing legacy systems can also be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So cloud computing, very powerful, but you gotta be aware of those potential pitfalls.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's SMAC, and then BRADA.
Okay. So BRADA, it's an acronym as well. And it stands for blockchain, robotics, automation of knowledge work, Internet of Things, digital fabrication, and augmented reality.
Okay. So blockchain first.
Blockchain,
Right.
right? So as they define it in the notes, it's this ever-growing list of records,
Okay.
like blocks that are linked together, right? And they're secured using cryptography.
Okay.
And each block contains this hash, a timestamp,
Okay.
and then the date itself.
So it's really about like immutability, right? Like you can't.
Exactly. That's one of the key characteristics.
Okay.
Right. So it's immutable, it's permanent, it's transparent, and it's decentralized.
Okay. So obviously we hear about blockchain a lot in the context of cryptocurrency,
Right.
but the notes point out that it can be used for a lot more than that. Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You can use it for things like smart contracts, supply chain management, even financial services like international payments.
Yeah. I feel like at its core, blockchain is really about building trust.
Exactly.
Right. Like in a
digital interaction.
in a digital world where
Yeah.
it's so easy to,
To fake things.
to fake things.
Right.
Or to manipulate things.
Right.
So blockchain kind of provides that foundation of security.
Yeah, that trust and security.
Okay, cool. And then robotics.
Right. So robotics, it's really a mix of, mechanical engineering, electronic engineering,
100%.
computer science.
So it's like a real, like a true interdisciplinary field.
It is, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
all about designing, building, and operating robots.
Okay.
They can perform all sorts of tasks.
Okay.
And these tasks can be in dangerous environments.
Right.
They could be on the manufacturing floor. They can be in service roles.
Right. We're seeing that more and more.
More and more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And then we have the automation of knowledge work.
Right. So this is really about using technology to automate tasks that humans typically do with their brains, right? Like
Sure.
knowledge work.
Right. So it's not just about, automating like a physical task on an assembly line.
Yeah.
It's automating something that requires, thought and decision making.
Exactly. And they make a distinction here between robotic process automation, RPA, and cognitive automation.
Okay.
So RPA is more about, simple repetitive tasks with structured data.
Mm-hmm.
And then cognitive automation
Right.
is more complex. It can deal with unstructured data. It uses AI, things like optical character recognition, machine learning.
And I guess the example that really jumps out at me from the notes is that one about processing accident claims.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
Something from like almost an hour down to like 6 seconds.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like that's incredible.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so automation of knowledge work, super powerful. And then Internet of Things, IoT?
IoT, yeah. So this is basically this network of interconnected devices, machines, sensors,
Okay.
physical objects,
Right.
all with unique IDs.
Okay.
And they exchange data over networks, without humans having to directly intervene.
Okay, and this is really like a convergence of a lot of technologies, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got your sensors, you've got your wireless communication, you've got your data analytics,
Exactly.
all kind of coming together.
And the notes do point out, with all this connectivity comes some concerns about privacy.
Yeah, for sure.
And security.
Yeah, and that's something that, that's only going to become more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we get, more and more devices connected.
And everything becomes connected.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got IoT and then digital fabrication.
Right. Digital fabrication, also known as 3D printing.
Right. Which I feel like we've been hearing about for a while.
We have, yeah.
But it's really starting to take off.
It is, yeah.
In lots of different industries.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so this is basically a design and production method, right?
Yeah.
That uses 3D modeling software, and then you're building objects layer by layer. Okay, and that just opens up so many possibilities in terms of, how we prototype things, how we manufacture things.
The speed, the customization.
Yeah.
It's really changing things.
Okay, cool. And then finally, augmented reality, AR.
AR. So this is all about, kind of overlaying computer-generated information onto our real-world experience.
Right. So it's like adding a digital layer
Yeah.
to the physical world.
Exactly. Yeah. Think about, like if you're working on something and you have instructions projected onto it.
Right.
Or, you're using your phone or some glasses.
Yeah.
And you've got these virtual objects kind of superimposed on your view.
Yeah. I think that's a technology that, maybe hasn't quite hit the mainstream yet.
Yeah, not quite.
But I feel like it's got so much potential in so many different areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all of these under SMSC and BREDA, these really represent like a full toolkit
of digital technologies that are, let's be honest, they're changing everything.
They are.
About how businesses operate.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, okay, how do we use all of this to actually build a successful business?
Right.
And that's where the idea of a digital business model comes in.
Exactly. And your notes have this great quote from Weil and Werner, I think it was 2014.
Okay.
That says that all organizations need a stronger digital online business strategy and model.
Okay.
And this applies to, whether they started out online or they were a brick and mortar store.
Right. So it's really kind of a universal need now.
It is, yeah.
And the notes lay out a bunch of reasons for this.
Right.
The fact that everything is becoming more digitized.
Right.
The ability to use data to really understand your customers.
Yeah.
The need to kind of create a competitive advantage.
Right.
You've got these digitally native customers who just expect things to be digital. They've grown up with it.
Exactly.
It's natural for them.
And then the power of online reviews and feedback, right? That's huge.
That can make or break you.
Exactly. And then also just the fact that, more and more offerings are becoming intangible.
Right.
Service-based, customer-centric.
Yeah, and digital models are really good for scaling up internationally.
Yeah. And I think that whole trend was obviously accelerated by the pandemic.
Yeah.
So there's a clear need for this, and then Weil and Werner, they propose this framework for thinking about a digital business model.
They do, and it's based on 3 things: content, experience, and platform.
Okay, so content. I guess at its most basic, that's what the business is actually delivering digitally, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's...
It's the information, it's the digital products, the ebooks, the streaming, even things like online training and support.
So it's really the core stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is what we offer in the digital world.
This is our digital offering.
Okay, cool. And then there's experience.
Right. So experience is about how that content is packaged and delivered to the customer. So that includes the interface, the user interface. It includes, recommendations.
Right. Yeah.
Like based on what they've looked at before.
Yeah. Personalization.
Personalization, exactly. Understanding their history with the company. And just the overall speed and ease of interaction.
So it's really about making it easy
and
enjoyable for the customer to interact with.
Absolutely.
With you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the platform.
Right. So platform is kind of the foundation, the underlying infrastructure that makes everything else possible.
Yeah. Okay.
And this includes both internal and external elements.
Okay.
So internally, you're thinking about business processes, customer data systems, technology infrastructure.
Right.
And then externally, it's things like the public internet, the devices the customers are using, and even partnerships with other companies.
Okay, so it's both like what's happening inside the company, and then how the company interacts with
the outside world.
With the outside world. Okay, and then the notes kind of make this distinction between the internal platform,
right,
which might be like data analytics or financial systems.
Yeah.
And then the external platform that customers are actually interacting with.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then they use Amazon as an example.
Yes, they do.
Of a company that's kind of killing it on all three.
Yeah, across all three dimensions.
What of those dimensions? So
content, experience, platform.
Okay, so that's the model, right? That's the digital business model.
It's framework.
That's the framework.
Yeah.
But then there's this question of, okay, but is the organization actually ready?
Right. Preparedness is a separate thing.
Yeah. And Gerbasani and Dunkel.
Yeah.
They kind of give us these 6 dimensions of digital preparedness.
They do, yeah.
So, what are those?
Okay, so the first one is strategic vision.
Okay.
So the organization needs to have a clear understanding of its digital needs.
Right.
And a strategy that's aligned with its business objectives.
So it's like you gotta know where you're going.
Yeah, where are we going with this? What are we trying to achieve?
Yeah. Okay. And then the second one is alignment.
Right. Alignment of vision and investments.
So it's not just about, okay, we've got this great idea. It's are we putting the resources behind it?
Exactly. Yeah. So you need senior management attention, you need financial resources, technological resources, human resources, and even a willingness to maybe cannibalize
right
short-term revenue for long-term growth.
Yeah, so it's really about, kind of putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then the third dimension is culture.
Right, a culture of innovation.
So are we set up to actually like encourage new thinking?
Yeah, are we open to new ideas? Are we willing to take some risks?
Yeah. Okay, and then the fourth dimension is intellectual property and know-how.
Right, so this is about applying software to improve operations, understand your customers better, understand your products better, and interact with your suppliers.
So it's really about using technology strategically to improve how the business works.
Exactly, and having the IP assets to back that up.
Right. Okay, and then the fifth dimension is strength of digital capabilities.
Right. So do you have the people? Do you have the expertise? Are those skills suitable for what you're trying to achieve?
Right. So it's about having the right people in the right roles to make all this happen.
Throughout the digital life cycle.
Okay. And then the sixth and final dimension is use of digital technologies.
Right. So this is about, okay, are you actually using these things? Are you using big data? Are you using analytics?
Yeah.
Are you using mobile? Are you using cloud? Are you using the internet?
Right. So it's one thing to, say, oh yeah, we're on board with all this. It's another thing to actually be putting it to work.
Yeah. Are you walking the walk?
Exactly. Okay. So these 6 dimensions, they really kind of give you this picture of where an organization is in terms of of its digital preparedness.
Its readiness.
Yeah, it's readiness. And then, but even with all of that, even if you've got all those boxes tick, there's still the question of, okay, but do you have the right capabilities?
Right.
Do you have the right skills, the right structure,
Organizational capability
to actually make this work? And that's where Ross, Beath, and Mocker come in with their 5 building blocks.
Exactly.
So let's dig into those a little bit.
Okay, so the first building block is shared customer insights. So this is about, figuring out what your customers really want.
Right.
And configuring your people, your processes, your technology to actually learn that.
So it's not just, okay, we think we know what they want. It's let's really dig in.
Let's find out.
And figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the example in the notes is Schneider Electric.
Yes, their digital services factory.
And they're using everything there, right? They're using mobile, cloud, analytics, IoT, cybersecurity.
The whole toolkit.
That whole toolkit to really figure out, okay, how do we build the best digital products and services for our customers?
Yeah, and they've created this dedicated function to really focus on that.
So it's not just like a side project. It's like
it's core.
This is core to what we do.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then the second building block is operational backbone.
Right, and this is really the foundational infrastructure, the systems, the data, the processes that keep the business running.
So it's kind of like the plumbing, right?
Yeah, you don't really see it.
You don't see it.
But it's essential.
But if it's not working, you've got big problems.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Okay, so, and this is about, making sure that your transactions are processed smoothly.
Right.
Your data is accurate.
Yeah.
You have visibility into your operations.
And you're automating those repetitive tasks.
Okay, and they give some good examples here. Amazon with their delivery system.
Right, how they manage to deliver all those packages.
It's mind-boggling.
It is.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
Uber with their payment system, right? Like that just works seamlessly.
Yeah.
And then CMEX Go, which is that platform for the construction industry.
Exactly, providing that foundation.
Okay, so operational backbone, super important. And then the third building block is digital platform building.
Right. So this is about creating this repository of components that you can then use to build new products and services.
So it's kind of like building a library of digital building blocks.
Exactly. Yeah, like digital Lego bricks.
Yeah. And this involves, having the right technical infrastructure, breaking down your business functionalities into these reusable components, and then having the data to kind of bring it all together.
And cloud services play a big role in this.
Okay, cool. And then the fourth building block is an accountability framework.
Right. So this is about who owns what?
Right.
And how do you balance autonomy with alignment?
Okay. So it's like, we want to give teams the freedom to innovate.
Yeah.
But we also need to make sure that everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction.
Exactly. Yeah. And they have these principles, like you have an owner for each component. You focus on the mission and the goals.
Right.
You use metrics to track progress.
Right.
You treat development as experiments. You release things frequently.
Right. So it's very much like that agile, iterative approach.
Yeah.
Okay. You have fully resourced teams. Collaboration is key. And you trust people rather than controlling them.
Right. So it's very much like a shift away from that old traditional top-down kind of management approach.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then the fifth and final building block is building an external developer platform.
Right. So this is where you take those digital components and you make them available to external partners.
Okay.
So they can build on them.
And the classic example there is like Google Maps API, right?
Yeah, which everyone uses.
Yeah, everyone uses. Or like the Apple App Store.
Right. We're bringing in external developers.
Bringing in all these developers to create all these apps.
Yeah.
Okay, so these 5 building blocks, they really kind of give you this roadmap.
They do.
For building the capabilities you need to succeed.
Yeah.
But then there's this kind of this dark cloud hanging over all of this.
Yeah. Which is that a lot of these digital transformations, they don't actually work.
They fail.
They fail.
And the numbers are kind of scary. Like